among the bulk of the senior officials of the ministries.
Es war nach der Struktur des Reichssicherheitshauptamts ausgeschlossen, dass ein Referent aus eigener Machtvollkommenheit oder über den Kopf des Vorgesetzten hinweg Ausnahmegenehmigungen von dessen Anordnungen geben konnte. Es wurden sehr viele Angehörige des Reichssicherheitshauptamts ihrer Dienststellung enthoben, sodass sich auch schon aus diesem Grunde jeder hütete, seine Befugnisse zu überschreiten. Es gab keine Anordnungen, bei denen den Referenten von vornherein gestattet war, Ausnahmen zu machen. Das bezieht sich jetzt nicht speziell auf das Referat Eichmann, sondern ganz allgemein auf das Reichssicherheitshauptamt. Mir sind die einzelnen Befugnisse Eichmanns nicht bekannt.
באותו עמוד 4 למטה, לפי מבנה המשרד הראשי לביטחון הרייך,
In accordance with the setup of the head office of the Reich, it was impossible that a head of a department could issue instructions which were not in accordance with his superior, exceeding his own authority and behind the back of his superior. In many cases, officers were removed from office, so that also because of this reason, every officer was careful not to exceed his authorities. There were no directives permitting heads of officers to perform acts which were not within their jurisdiction. And this, in general, concerned all officers of the Reich Security Office. I do not know Eichmann's competence in his office. I do not know what this was.
Anlässlich der Amtschefsbesprechungen. An diesen Besprechungen hat Eichmann nicht teilgenommen.
On page 5, in the middle of the page, I visited Heydrich once in every 3 or 4 weeks to discuss matters between heads of departments. Eichmann was not present.
Schon nach seiner ganzen Einstellung überschritt Eichmann auch nicht den Rahmen seiner ihm gegebenen Anweisungen. Es wäre mir aufgefallen, wenn Eichmann seine Anweisungen während meiner Arbeit im SD-Hauptamt überschritten hätte. Ich kann mich aber an etwas derartiges nicht erinnern.
On the following page, page 6, again in the middle, the passage. The whole approach which Eichmann followed, he never acted beyond the authority granted to him. Had he done so, had he acted ultra vires during my work in the SD offices, I would have noticed. But I cannot remember such a case.
Auf derselben Seite unten, am Ende des Absatzes, solange Eichmann mir unterstand, hat nach meiner Erinnerung keine judenfeindlichen Äußerungen oder Vorschläge gemacht. Es lag nicht in seiner Natur, Vorschläge zu machen, die über das Maß der damals vorgesehenen antijüdischen Maßnahmen hinausgingen.
On the same page, at the end of the page, at the end of the same passage, as long as Eichmann was my subordinate, he never, according to my memory, put forward any hostile propositions in regard to the Jews. He was not in the habit of putting forward suggestions which were not in the framework of the steps against Jews already planned. On page 7 in the center,
Eichmann machte die Reise nach Palästina nicht allein, sondern zusammen mit Hagen. Soviel ich weiß, wurde der Bericht über diese Reise von Hagen verfasst. Den Palästina-Bericht muss ich wohl gelesen haben. Der Inhalt dieses Berichts ist mir aber nicht mehr in Erinnerung. Als mir Eichmann nicht mehr unterstellt war, erhielt ich auch keine Berichte mehr von ihm. Aus dem Dokument Nummer 2, das mir vorgelegt wurde, ersehe ich aus dem Diktatzeichen HG sowie aus der Überschrift, dass der Bericht tatsächlich von Hagen verfasst wurde.
On
page 7, at the lower half of the page, Eichmann took the trip to Palestine not alone. He was accompanied by Hagen. And as far as I know, the report about the trip to Palestine was drawn up by Hagen. The report about Palestine I had to read, but the content of the report itself I cannot remember. When Eichmann was not discontinued to be my subordinate, I received no further reports from him. From the document put before me, I see by the initials of the man who dictated SG, and also from the heading that this report was actually drawn up by Hagen.
Über eine Verbindung oder ein organisatorisches Zusammenwirken zwischen Eichmann und den Einsatzgruppen ist mir nichts bekannt.
On
page 10, at the end of the page, the passage reads about any organizational cooperation between Eichmann and the Einsatzgruppen, the operation groups. I know nothing at all.
Zu der Konferenz in Krummhübel, Seite 12. Ich glaube, dass mit Ausnahme von Schleier und von Tadden die Tagungsnehmer über den damaligen Stand der Endlösung nicht informiert waren.
About the conference at Krummhübel, I believe that besides Schleier and von Tadden, those who took part had no information in connection with the situation at the time of the final solution. These are the passages I wish to bring to the attention of the court.
President of Court, Mr. Hausner, what would you like to draw attention to from this testimony? On page 2 at the bottom,
Mr. Hausner, the passage is marked on the margin, marked in ink.
Eichmann's department had a special status. In this department, there were employed more people than in any other department. And then on page 3, whenever Eichmann was entitled to sign in correspondence with foreign institutions and with ministries, even without a co-signature. I do not remember such cases from my memory, but even so, these would have been cases, undoubtedly these would have been cases of an extension of his jurisdiction as a head of department. Then page 4 in the middle. If I had tried to obtain a special exception or something like that for the benefit of a Jew, I would not have gone to Eichmann, because he, after all, was the representative, the conspicuous representative of the other side. Then on page 5, this starts at the end of page 4. Eichmann's competence and detail is not known to me, but it is beyond the shadow of any doubt that he had greater jurisdiction than all the other department heads. That was the general understanding in the head office of Reich Security. The general impression was that Eichmann was not only subordinated to Müller, but that to some extent he worked alongside of him. Müller was known as one of the notorious men, and I would say that they had good understanding between themselves, these two. The expression should have been Müller was one of the notorious driving forces. Under a different boss than Müller, Eichmann's jurisdiction would not have been as far-reaching as they were in this case. It was known that Eichmann had direct access to Heydrich and to Kaltenbrunner, and I say that even though I cannot give any concrete facts to bear this out. I have even seen Eichmann in the hall leading to Heydrich's office. As far as I recall, I've seen him there. I saw him there at least once or twice. Then further on the same page, I believe that Eichmann's superiors regarded him particularly suited for his task because he was a veteran National Socialist. I believe that it was especially Heydrich who valued the fact that the Eichmann department was placed in the hands of a veteran National Socialist. I believe that Müller and Eichmann complemented each other quite well. Now on page 6, in the middle of the page, Eichmann definitely believed in National Socialism. Through his National Socialist conception, his world was filled out. This National Socialist philosophy filled his life. And then further on down this page, I think that in case of doubt, Eichmann always acted according to party doctrine in its most extreme interpretation. Now, page 8, toward the bottom of the page. At least in the period of the war, one could therefore try to obtain transfer from an Einsatzkommando. I myself have tried and I was successful. It was possible even in other cases which were discussed at Nuremberg. Straight from the head office of Reich Security. Now
In diesem Zusammenhang erwähne ich, dass mir ein ungarischer Gendarmerie-Oberleutnant erzählt hat, er habe selbst gehört, dass der ungarische Feldmarschallleutnant Farago vor dem Volksgericht in Budapest ausgesagt habe, er habe die Verantwortung für die Planung der Ghettoisierung und Deportation der Juden in Ungarn gehabt.
I quote, In this contact, I wish to recall that an Oberleutnant of the Hungarian Gendarmerie had informed me that he himself had heard that the Hungarian Field Marshal Lieutenant Faragó, F-A-R-A-G-H-O, told the People's Tribunal in Budapest in testimony that he had been responsible for planning the ghettoization and deportation of the Jews in Hungary. Then on page 7 in the last paragraph,
dass in diesem Zusammenhang der Obergruppenführer Jüttner bei mir vorstellig wurden, seine Schilderung über den Marsch und den Zustand der erschöpften Menschen in der Vernehmung vom 3. Mai 1948 in Nürnberg, die mir vorgelesen worden ist, kann ich in eigener Anschauung als richtig bestätigen. Ich bin nicht in der Lage anzugeben, ob in diesem Zusammenhang der Name Eichmann gefallen ist. Wegen dieser Fußmärsche bin ich bei dem Reichsführer Himmler vorstellig geworden. Der Reichsführer Himmler setzte sich darauf gleich in meiner Gegenwart mit dem Gruppenführer Müller vom Reichssicherheitshauptamt in Verbindung. Ich habe selbst gehört, dass der Reichsführer Himmler es anordnete, dass weitere Fußmärsche unterbleiben sollten. Die in Marsch gesetzten sollten mit Fahrzeugen abtransportiert werden. Aus diesem Gespräch des Reichsführers Himmler mit dem Reichssicherheitshauptamt Müller entnahm ich, dass die Fußmärsche mit Kenntnis und Wissen des Reichssicherheitshauptamts erfolgten.
I quote now from this paragraph on page 7. I wish to recall that in this connection, Obergruppenführer Jüttner applied to me his description of the foot march and the condition of the exhausted men as he described it in his interrogation at Nuremberg on the 3rd of May 1948, a testimony which was read out to me. I can confirm this report from my own knowledge. However, I am not in a position to say whether Eichmann's name had been mentioned in this context. As in connection with these foot marches, I applied to the Reichsführer Himmler. The Reichsführer Himmler got in touch immediately and in my presence with Gruppenführer Müller from the head office of Reich Security. I have heard myself that the Reichsführer Himmler gave an order that future foot marches should be prevented. Those people who were already on the road were to have been taken away in vehicles. Out from this conversation between Himmler and Müller, I concluded that these foot marches had been carried out with a full knowledge and awareness of the head office of Reich Security. These are the passages, Your Honor, which I wanted to draw attention to from this testimony.
Now, does the Attorney General wish to call attention of the court to any passages in this Winkelman affidavit? On page 5.
President of Court, which paragraph is that?
This passage was already read on behalf of the defense, so it is not read again, but then another passage on the same file, which has not been read before. Eichmann belonged to the Reich Security head office in Berlin.
On page 4, is it?
And from this authority, his orders were given, if and when they were given, thus no matter was actually changed in Hungary. The last passage on the same page, this quoted by the Attorney General, I wish to say for Eichmann and in his defense that this officer, in his haughty behavior, I did not like. In my opinion, was really the personification of a haughty subaltern, and I understand by this a man who uses his competence to the full extent without any moral restrictions and compunctions. He has no hesitation to exceed his jurisdiction if he believes that this is done in the spirit of the man who gave the orders.
President of Court, was that all from this testimony?
Mr. Hausner.
President of Court,
I marked Winkelman's affidavit with Roman 11.